I told him to turn the temperature down for everyone that was hot. Just kidding. Had a lot of people coming over like, whoa. Last night, everybody was bitching because it was too hot when they came through. Now it's too cold. So, like the farmer, right? Too dry, too wet. We're about close. This next panel is going to get good. Talking inputs, fertilizer, and we're talking land, and where we think we're headed and how we're going to navigate around all of this. I wanted to start the conversation as we get more folks rolling in. We'll wait for them for a second. I can introduce everyone. Mitch Eviston's far side. Mitch is CEO of Meristem. Raised his hand. Was formerly at Winfield. They switched him up on me. We got Grant Wells, Wells Ag. Done a fabulous job, knockout job building an incredible ag business, ag retail business, doing some other things with BW Fusion and some other areas we're trying to help them with, and looking forward to that relationship. Jeff Tarsi, Senior VP, head of North America Division for Nutrien. We'll probably beat Tarsi up a little bit. He'll field some good questions. Awesome guy. Love talking to him and hearing all the new things they've got going on at Nutrien. Barrett Ersick, the guy's already introduced, CEO, founder of Organics. Barrett's got a great story on his founding. Carter Malloy, a good friend of mine, CEO, founder of Acre Trader. And Chris Baumann, this is going to be the most controversial guest. I think possibly he could get injured leaving the building, but we're going to see. Founder, CEO of Cash Rents. I've already gone to blows with a couple of my buddies here in the farming side, so it is what it is. I tell my friends, I try to be on the forefront and relay back to all of you and all my other friends on what's happening and what's coming down the pipe. And whether it's through our other business ventures or other avenues and businesses that we have, I'm able to do a lot of that. I forgot to mention, Bruere couldn't make it. My buddy that's head of People's Company, the real estate company, he had a last minute thing come up. Then he was going to send Dave Muth, and I guess the plane couldn't take off. Got too windy this morning. So I think he's got a couple of private planes, and they've done well. So I'm going to start it off announcing our newest venture. Put on my Van Trump farm and land hat. We partnered with Acre Trader, and I'm super excited with Carter. I was talking with Carter a while back, and we were talking about some of and I think you all know Acre Trader. They buy farms. They've got olive farms. They buy other farms all across the United States. And then they're fragmented, invested in, lack of a better term. Other people can invest in a diversified portfolio of farming ground. I probably butchered that all up. It's an elementary version. Fortune was just down interviewing Carter last night. They sent a reporter down. So, some big things are happening with Acre Trader. And Carter and I got talking. He says, I don't want to say he made some mistakes, but he said early on when he was buying ground, the farm real estate side is just crazily fragmented. And everything is just tough. You got to go to the county courthouse. I'll let these guys who are better understanding of it all than I am. We were always in the residential and multifamily real estate side of things. And we've had real estate company. We had a real estate company 20-some years ago. My sister's still in real estate. My wife's obviously in real estate, does all of our properties and buildings in mostly metropolitan areas and through our farm grounds. So I started talking to Carter, and I'm like, why can't we spin it? And I was starting to get more calls. So Blackstone and BlackRock were both going to be here. They had to cancel. Barclays canceled. So your big banks on the east and the west canceled. But I think they're wanting to make deeper plays and investments into agriculture. And we're seeing that from many, many people. So we thought with the tools in the back end that Carter has come up with, they have new tools where they can tell if water's been standing on it. If he goes to buy a farm ground, you try and hoodwink him, and he can use his AI. They've been hiring tons and tons of computer engineers to get the right intel, just like our last speaker talked, to get the right intel on the farm ground. And if we can get the right intel, we think we can project or predict better. There are new companies that we're partnering with, like Earth Optics, who you'll see outside. Earth Optics had the technology to, look for IEDs over in Afghanistan and in the Middle East. And they took that technology, the founders, and are using it to check, better soil mixtures deeper into the soils. Well, we now think, Chris, Matt, and some of the others at Benson are here, we now think we can test certain soils and find out which types of certain protein models can be best raised on those soils. Now, as I'll go into more tomorrow, I think the food distribution model is going to massively change. I think we're at a pivotal point. And it's going to be the land grab to where the proximity and location of the farm is that is going to matter insanely. If Walter and his team are going to put up a new crush facility, and I know that intel, what do you think I may know about farm ground price? And if we can then take the Earth Optics and we can take other pattern ag, we can take other friends of ours and use those tools to look at the lay of the land, Carter's AI team he's building on his end, we have a really good assessment and idea of the valuations. I think some of the farms are being sold massively undervalued. I'm sure Carter would probably agree. I think some don't know what's coming. They don't know what's coming infrastructure-wise. So we think I can pool my network, and we can pool the network, and if you've got farm ground you want to sell, I think we can help by saying, hey, you may want to maybe hold off 6 months. We know of this project that's going to pop. We know of people who are voting to pass bond issues. Or we may say, yes, I think you're probably going to be, that is one heck of a deal. And you may want to jump all over that because of what we know coming that direction. So we're going to make it available and offer it to our group through Acre Trader. They're rolling out their Acre Pro program. And I think if we can take the front end through our network, the producers, just an example, I had a guy call. He said, hey, I got this farm ground coming up, $65 million. It's right out, it's an hour and 30 from St. Louis, not to tell you where it is, hour and 30 from St. Louis, hour and 40 from Bloomington, some other place. I'm like, whoa, I like the location because I think there's some companies I know who have huge pockets that are wanting to have location to St. Louis, have location to Decatur with ADM, have locations to go direct. The farmer wants to farm the ground. You could put it up, we can buy it, they can farm it, and we can close the loop and control it if need be. And so I think there are ways we can, or we could put farm buying groups together if need be. But I think we can build our front-end network with back-end AI, because I don't have the AI tools, let's just be honest. Carter and all the money they're getting from Wall Street, he's hiring these computer engineers to get a better analysis of the land. So it's going to be critical for us, fertilizer side, what Grant, Mitch, what they're doing at Nutrient on the carbon side. We have to use their resources and their skills coupled with what Carter and his team's building and Chris and the crew over there to get a better analysis and read on the land. Because I'm bullish land. So I'm bullish land in a big bad way. But it may be like Vern said, the horse might not be pulling the carriage, it might be doing something different. Whether it's through solar, whether it's through a different way, I think land is going to end up being the biggie as we move forward. Because we're getting a lot of people, that are wanting to buy farms and farm ground that aren't in farming. And everyone knows this. So I think if we can help provide some intel and get a better read on this thing, I think I'm super excited that we can bring it and roll it out. So I'm pumped to use the tools we have, and we'll sit down and talk a little bit more. People's Company has their big land conference. Steve and I are buddies, and Bruere family's always been great to me. I called him when I told him we were going to try and do this project from an infrastructure standpoint and help a lot of people all across the country. I think it's going to be a win-win. So his conference is next week. I think Carter's going up. Jordan's going up. I may go up. I told Steve I'd try and make it up. But it's next week, so if anyone wants to attend, hit him up. And I think we'll get this thing rolling. We'll kick it off. I think I need to take my mic with me. Let's have Mitch kick it off let's talk about fertilizer and inputs here, and we'll go down the line. What are you seeing at Mariston?
So you want to talk about crop inputs and fertilizer and land, Kevin?
Right.
Whichever.
No, let's do fertilizer.
Let's do fertilizer. Well, I'm not in the fertilizer business, so nobody's going to kick my ass today. When it comes to crop inputs, there's fertilizer and there's crop protection. And they're both experiencing enormous inflation today. But the drivers aren't the same. If you're in the crop chem business today, you're pretty much totally dependent on a supply chain out of China. If you're going to make glyphosate, Roundup, or glufosinate, Liberty, the first thing you start with is a product called yellow phosphorus. And 90% of the yellow phosphorus is mined in China. China this year, probably because of the Olympics, chose to halt their capacity of yellow phosphorus. As a result, industry-wide, that product availability is down about 60% versus where it was a year ago. Until those yellow phosphorus mines open back up, you're going to continue to see pricing pressure in your non-selective herbicides like Liberty and Roundup. We get through the Olympics and we open up the supply chain between North America and China again, I think you're going to see a lot of relief 12 months from now in the crop protection market. The capacity that fueled the industry in 2019, when none of us even knew what a product shortage was, it's still there. But a terrible thing happens when nobody works. Nothing. And we've taken the year off, and nothing's happened. Once we get that 2019 capacity up and going, and we all go back to work again, and we get the vessels going across the pond in an efficient manner, you're going to see the crop protection market, in my opinion, and I might be wrong, but my opinion is you're going to see some deflation in the crop protection market. If I was in the ag chemical business today, I wouldn't want to have any inventory come this September. I would want to have my inventory gone and see how the supply chain is going to function in 2023. If it opens back up, you're going to see deflation. If it doesn't open back up, you're going to see more of what we're seeing this year. On the fertilizer side, it's a little different deal. A lot of farmers out there today, think back over your farming careers. What do you typically spend on fertilizer a year as a percent of your revenue? How many guys in the room and ladies in the room spend 25% of their farm revenue a year on fertilizer? Well, statistics show most of you spend about 25% of your revenue. So if you're bringing in $1,000 an acre of revenue, more than likely you're spending $250 on fertilizer. If corn crashes back to $3, my guess is your fertilizer cost is going to be 25% of $600. But today, if you've got $1,200 corn and no competition in the fertilizer business, you're going to still spend 25% of your revenue on fertilizer. That's because there's no competition. I'm not saying the players in it are bad players. I'm not saying that at all, but there's only so many quarries and mines in the world. And when you have limited competition, you can price your product to the value of the acre. So if we're at $1,200 revenue in corn, you can bet we're going to be $350 an acre in fertilizer. Because of the lack of competition, fertilizer will flow with the price of commodities. The way you break that cycle is you find competition. And today where you find competition in fertilizer is biologicals. There have been untold millions of dollars spent trying to influence everybody in this room the last 4 or 5 years over how you can utilize biologicals, not to eliminate fertilizer, but to hopefully reduce your fertilizer. If you want to get cheap fertilizer prices again, you gotta find competition. I encourage everybody to take a hard look at biologicals. It don't have to be from our company, Meristem. There are a lot of great companies in the industry today selling similar technologies that we do. They work. When you go in and you reduce your fertilizer spend by 10 to 15%, you're now impacting the price of fertilizer. So bring competition to the fertilizer market, because without competition, you're going to spend 25% of your revenue on fertilizer regardless of the price of commodities. If you want to change that directive, find some competition, and that will change that paradigm. So look for competition. The crop chem industry, I have not seen any price gouging. There will be areas of the world this year where we're complaining about paying $80 for Liberty and we're sick to our stomachs over $50 Roundup. Well, at least we can buy $75 Liberty and $50 Roundup. Because if you're in a developing country and 50% of the yellow phosphorus production's been idled, that yellow phosphorus is going to go to a market that can pay for it. So if you're in a developing country, without the revenue we enjoy in this country, you're not going to buy any non-selective herbicide next year because there won't be any in your country because there's not enough supply to feed that price point. What limited supply there is going to come to the U.S. where there's the wealth to buy it. I think this is short term. The supply chain will open again, but right now it's closed up tighter than a bank. I mean, right now, if you've got EDTA acid to sell, I don't care what you're selling it for, I'm buying. Because without it, we can't make products. And the lead time to get acid out of China right now for new production is 6 to 8 months. Once that lead time goes back to where it was 2 years ago, you'll see the crop protection industry, in my opinion, experience some deflation once the supply chain opens up.
Yeah, Mitch was one of the main guys at Winfield when they went and sold and has a farm in Indiana, correct? We're at in Indiana, Mitch. Wabash. And so I love talking to Mitch. I mean, I learn a lot every time, and I think he's got a great view because he's been on both sides. I mean, deep on the inside of a big corporate and on the outside as a farmer as well. So I think it brings a good mix. So let's skip Grant. We'll come back to Grant in a second. Let's go to, let's do it up. Jeff, what are you seeing from Nutrien? I mean, I love Jeff. He always gives me a fresh look and really tells it how it is. So
I'd have liked to gotten a jump start on Mitch, but no, look, interesting perspective. And, you know, I represent the retail side of the business with Nutrien Ag Solutions, and got some customers out in the audience. I met some on the break just a minute ago, and, you know, our job that we have and our mission every day is we can't pick which input segment. We've got to provide fertilizer, we've got to provide seed, we've got to provide crop protection chemistry. We're very heavy in the application side of the business, very asset intensive. And so, you know, what I'm thinking about today is how am I going to service our customers this spring? And we have seen, you know, we're seeing historically high prices across NP and K. I think those products and prices probably somewhere around a peak level right now would be my opinion. I did several interviews back in October, and I can tell you as we were getting this crop harvested, I had a lot of concerns over can we supply this market. And I tell you, in my opinion, we got one great benefit this fall is we had a really open fall, and we had heavy application. And I thought that was absolutely key going into this spring. I've had a lot of people out on the break ask about supply. They're obviously interested in transportation and getting product in and out to the farm. And I think if we wouldn't have had this open fall that we had this year, we were going to be in for a much bumpier ride this spring. We had a heavy NH3 application. We had good P and K. The fall of, just to give you a little bit of background and history on how these things kind of start developing, and I've been in the retail side of the business over 30 years, but 2020, the fall of 2020 was the largest fall application of MP and K that I'd ever seen in my history in retail side of the business. And so we came into the spring of 21 basically empty on products, and I'm talking about nutrient and what we had in our bins. And at the same time, we got rising commodity prices, and growers really poured the coal. You guys swung for the fence last year from a yield standpoint, which is what you do when you got good commodity prices on it. But we never quite got ourselves replenished as far as building the inventories back up. And then you get into the environment of the fall, and you had Hurricane Ida, and a lot of people probably don't give that hurricane enough credit. I do, because I come from that part of the world. You can tell from this accent. But Hurricane Ida put a big hurt on us from a production standpoint, because we have so much production in South Louisiana, both on the chemistry and the fertilizer side of things. And that just made these markets even tighter. And then you had rising gas prices in Europe. You had a lot of those countries just curtail their production on it. And it kind of led to this situation that we got into. Mitch, I'm like you. I think as we get through this spring and start to break through the halfway point of this next year, I think we'll see some things go back the other way. And I agree with you 100% on chemistry as well as it regards to that. But our thoughts right now are, how can we make sure that we're at a standpoint where we can supply our customers for this spring? Because look, as we heard, I sat in on some of the other conferences this morning, we're dealing with very strong commodity prices right now. If I look at year over year cash futures prices today across all the major crops, they're very strong. And I think that growers again see an opportunity to have a really good season with it. And so we're working hard to, and if I could say one thing to this group, I've never seen a time where communications is as important as it is right now. And a lot of you in this room don't do business with us, but I don't care who you do business with. Make sure you're sitting with your retailer. If you haven't, if you're just starting today, you're starting late. But make sure you're sitting with your retailer. We started with our customers back in August because, if I look on the chemistry side of things, we didn't find out until March of 2021 that we were going to be short on these chemistry products. And as you all know in this room, that doesn't give you a whole lot of time to adjust to that. And at least we had knowledge this past year, this fall in August, beginning in August, that there were, like glufosinate and glyphosate, those products were going to be extremely short. Well, look, when we're building solutions for our customers, we have alternatives. There are things we can do, but you got to be open-minded to do it. But the main thing is to sit down with your agronomist, sit down with your retailer, and making sure they understand your plan so that we can prepare in advance as much as possible. Because we're going to still be hand to mouth this spring on a lot of things. Kevin, I'm convinced if we're in that 92, 93 million acre corn planting, which a lot of people, I heard the number 95 this morning, but just if I look at things, we look 92, 93. I think that we can supply this spring on it. That doesn't mean it'll be choppy, and it doesn't mean we'll have product on the exact hour that we want it. The two coasts concern me some, East and West Coast, because imports are really big on UAN on those two sides of the country. But if you don't do anything else when you leave here, if you haven't sat down with wherever you're sourcing your inputs from, make sure you go sit down, because this is not a year to pull up to a retail branch and walk in for the first time in the spring and lay out what you need. If you do that, we're going to be disappointed as we go into this crop year.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I text the questions in. We're going to get to them. So next, let's move to Grant. I met Grant. Grant, I came out and spoke for you a long time ago, and I'd heard some big things from Baird, and it's like, man, there's this kid. He's just blowing it up in the ag retail side. I think Grant had come home, and his dad had passed away, and Grant kind of took over the business and just went lights out, gangbusters with it. He's big game hunter, and I always like following him on some of his picks he sends me for the game hunting. But I just hit it off with Grant. I mean, he shoots straight as anybody I've ever met as well. And that's why I got all these same guys up here to shoot straight with you guys on this input side. And, you know, I'm excited to hear what he has to say. And Grant, take it away and tell him where you came from, what you did.
Yeah, you bet. Jordan, I asked him what I needed to prepare for, what I needed to have with me when I came up here, and he said, just bring a couple revolvers. So that's what I brought with me. I'm not much of a public speaker. I'm not real prepared, but I tell it from the gut and get pretty passionate. So sometimes probably the best thing I could have done is just take a chill pill for a second, you know. But anyway, so, you know, Wells Ag Supply, right, we're an independent regional type retailer, and we really gotten to where we've gotten from telling the truth. And that's what I think is missing from this market is there's a lot of retailers out here that don't tell the truth. They skew the rhetoric, they're biased. So one of our biggest value propositions as a company is we're gonna sell what works. We're not going to sell manufacturers. We're not biased and we can't be bought. So that whole mindset of customer first, farmer first goes into every segment that encompasses ag retail. That includes fertilizer, chemicals, nutritionals, and bring some integrity to this market and expose the truth. And so everything that's done in this ag retail market today, I'm 36, started the company at 22, so the last, whatever that is, 13 years, I've said, how is conventional ag retail being done today, and how can it be done better? And in looking at all of that, you know, there's different segments: chemicals, fertilizers, nutritionals. I'll pick on maybe or look at the fertilizer sector. You know, when I look to get into the fertilizer business at 22 years old, again, this business is very political as well. If you're young and you've got something going on, you get shot pretty quick. So I had to learn how to navigate politics real quick. And so I learned real quick about the good old boy system, right? If you ain't in the club, you don't get access. And so that really pisses me off. I can't stand that because people need to tell the truth to these farmers and be somebody that's you know gonna share the truth. I'm not gonna.
Grant, where are you farming at?
Where am I farming? Northwest Iowa.
Northwest Iowa.
Yep, Northwest Iowa, right in the heart of it. So looking at fertilizers, you know, right, nitrogen, I identified real quick, you know, what do my customers need? What do the customers need out here? And looking at that, you know, CF told me at the time it was Tara, they said, sorry, Grant, you know, we're not going to supply you. You know, you're not big enough. You're not one of these guys. So I had to go through different channels, and now we've rose up to be, you know, very large. I think one of Coke's second largest customers in Iowa. But what drives me nuts is, okay, CF petitioned the government to put tariffs on imports of UAN and urea. And so why is our government fighting us farmers and knocking out some of the competition, like Mitch said? When they did that, it drastically affected, you know, our domestic price. And so then phosphorus as well. And you know, when we knock out players, and you know, it just becomes more monopolized. And so in this whole nutritional and fertilizer space, again, I'm laying my head at night and waking up, I'm going, there's got to be something more to this thing. There's got to be something different. How do we fight back? If you guys come to my farm, you'll see that I have a windmill on my farm. You know, some people call it my Obama tower, you know, and I'm a Republican. I'm proud to say that. And but you know, it was my way to fight back because I have a local co-op that's an electrical co-op that gouges the piss out of me on my monthly fees. So I'm like, well, hell, let's build a damn windmill then to fight back. So that's everything that I'm all about. And so started figuring out, you know, tissue sampling. So, you know, NPK, let's just keep putting more on like a moron. And is that going to get us to 300 bushel corn? I want 300. I want 400. I want more than I had last year. I'm competitive. And I'll be hell and high water gonna try to find out. And so I put more on, and my tissues weren't moving, and my yields weren't moving. And I'm going, okay, what the hell's going on here? So I start doing tissue sampling. I listened to guys like Randy Dowdy, way back when I was younger, influential, and he's saying, you know, you send your samples off to a lab, and they give you a report whether you're good or not good. And so I'm getting that, and basically you call and say, am I good for 300? And no one knows. So it all starts with, where do the numbers need to be, right? So we learn from the universities that your part per million K and your part per million P need to be at these levels if you want to achieve optimum yield. Well, I wasn't seeing correlations in higher part per millions into higher yields and higher tissue levels, right? So it all starts with where do the numbers need to be so we can make smarter investments. So I'm just kind of a dumb young farm kid out here that stumbles and falls into things. I call it divine destiny, actually, and being aware of that. Had a guy stumble into my path that had the information, had it done. I was going to be my entire life trying to figure it out, and here this man had done it. And we start looking at that and had the chance to utilize it, and started figuring out that higher phosphorus part per million wasn't the key driver of higher P in the plant. It was, in fact, biological activity was the key driver of phosphorus in the plant. And I got tipped off 10, 12 years ago that Monsanto was going to invest in biologicals, right? And so where did I get to where I've got to today? It's by telling the truth and having educated answers. So with biologicals, as Mitch had touched on, they're not EPA regulated. So you have to have 3-4 years of data to be able to tell if they're dog crap or not. And so I started looking at biologicals 10 or 12 years ago before that was even a thing, just hearing that Monsanto, now Bayer, is going to validate this thing. And I found a company called Biodyne. Biodyne is out of Indiana. They're a family-based company, and they have great biological products. And started looking at their stuff, and it was working. They talked about phosphorus solubilization. That they have products, 26 different strains in there, 6 or 7 of them solubilize phosphorus. And I'm going, okay, well, let's try this. I took some farms and didn't apply any commercial phosphorus for about 7 years, and I started soil sampling it to see if I'm going to mine my soil, because no one wants to mine the soil, and I sure don't want to jeopardize my reputation and tell somebody not to put on phosphorus, right? And so I'm using the biologicals, and I'm checking my standard Bray Malick part per million test, and after year 4, my damn soil test went up. I didn't apply any, and I'm pulling big yields, and it went up. I'm like, okay, we're on to something. And so, again, knowing where the numbers need to be in the tissues is where you start. And so today we have farmers out here that have 5 part per million phosphorus, and we have farmers out here that have 40 part per million phosphorus on their standard Braylick-made tests. And I can take the biological from Biodyne, put it on the farmer with 5 part per million phosphorus in the soil, and have 30% higher phosphorus tissues at V4 and throughout the season. And so then how do we address K? How do we address nitrogen? How do we do this? And it starts with, knowing where you need to be, and then finding the products and the solutions and the ways to do it to get there, and to get there the most efficiently. So with my relationship with Biodyne, we created BW Fusion. Biodyne and Wells fused together with the sheer goal of let's figure out what these damn targets need to be, and then let's just quit lying to the farmer. Let's bring some integrity. Let's challenge traditional retail to tell the truth and to start getting better. We aren't going to be able to attack, rule the world. We got to trigger everybody else out here. Retail's challenge them so that they can get better. And so it comes down to just truly knowing. And so when we formed BW Fusion, doors started opening. Our sheer goal it isn't to sell products. It's to educate on what you need. And in that, it's the conversation starts with, let's just show you where to not spend money this year. Let's be efficient with that money. Somebody said, hey, Grant, how lucky you started Fusion 2 years ago. It's, and now your name's blowing up. BW Fusion, it's $6 corn, pretty easy to sell nutritional at $6 corn. I said, no, farmers need us, and we thrive in $3 corn environments, because in $3 corn environments, we can show you with our information tool where to stop spending money. So again, higher phosphorus part per millions weren't the higher tissues. K, we figured out that if you have 4, 5, 6, 700 part per billion mags in your soil and your pHs are over 7s, you could put K on till you're blue in the face in the fall, and it's never going to register in the plant. You're never going to raise the plant tissue with high mag, high pH, over applying nitrate and tight carbon and nitrogen ratios. So instead of putting more K on, how do we strip mag out? How do we reduce pH so that the K that we got is actually more available to the plant? What are all different ways to apply K? With root interception rather than diffusion, different tactics, different forms of product. Sulfur, ammonium thiosulfate is a double bond. It takes 30 to 45 days to release, we're seeing. We're seeing other forms that are released faster. So again, knowing what's your yield goal. My yield goal is, let's say, for a farmer, 225 bushel, and I just want to make the most damn money I can at 225 bushel. All right, well, let's stop putting potash on in the fall, totally cut out phosphorus, redo potash in season, and figure out how to balance your NPK and look at measurements like what we do with our 365 with BW Fusion. We look at a Haney extract, okay? And that Haney extract shows how much of our nitrogen in the soil is ammoniacal, how much is nitrate, how much is actually available and going to release to this plant. And, so basically, we need to find more efficient ways, to apply our fertility and challenge the rhetoric and to challenge the monopolies, create competition. I love it. I just love the fact that in my lifetime, we're going to be able to see the Simplots of the world and some of these monster conglomerate monopoly fertilizer companies, the house of cards is going to fall.
Okay. Now, you guys can tell. So when Bayer called me to go speak for Grant, I was like, well, okay, who am I going to, and this kid, and they said, man, we've never seen a kid gain market share they're just like, this kid's gaining market. I mean, customers love him. They don't leave him. And I go out there and I'm like, okay, I see why now. So, I mean, I think Grant does a great job. And
not lying to your farmer goes a long ways.
No, I agree with you, buddy. That's why I think a lot of people are here in support of our group. So, yeah, I agree, Grant. And, and I commend him for that. And that most all of the products, I mean, everything I've ever heard, you all test it, Bodie tests it, you guys all test it out on all your own farms, and you're like, this is shit. We're throwing it out. We're not you. So I commend him. And that's how Barrett and I, so when I invested with Barrett and with the organic story, you guys know the story on organics. It was on a lot of Major League Baseball fields and football stadiums, and that's kind of my background. I worked for the NFL for a while, and then my background's in sports, and I called around, I was on a lot of championship golf courses, and Barrett had no idea about ag, and he wasn't getting into ag. He was going to get into ag, but his background was in turf and lawn, and he said, hey, there's a lot of opportunity in the ag, and he had some Amish people test it out. They just were using it in the landscape business, tested it out, and won a watermelon contest against their cousin. And so Barrett's like, man, this organics might work on some farms. So I like the fact Barrett didn't come at the ag space to try and, monetize everything. He was in lawn landscape and just thought, hey, this might work. Similar to what Grant's saying, like, there's got to be better ways. There's got to be other solutions. So, I'll let Barrett talk on his behalf on what we've seen going on. And it's been cool the last 3 or 4 years to see some of our farmers who have used it have seen some remarkable things happen on a lot of ground that they weren't having good success with, and now they are. And they're seeing, like Grant was talking about and Mitch was talking about, reducing input costs. Now, I want to make sure everyone in here understands. I also have some friends and buddies in the room who used organics. Nah, ain't worth the shit, I don't want to use it. So they didn't see any result. So I'm going to be open and up front, just right here. I told Barrett I was going to say it. I mean, there's only about 4 that I know of all the people we've gotten on board. But maybe just some soils. I don't know. Maybe the things aren't right. Maybe the stars don't align. I'm not sure. I don't know what underground exactly what's happening. But I just want to say, I think the whole theme here is this. We need to be looking for solutions. And I can't tell you which one's going to like Grant and all. Grant, how far west do you guys go?
We're getting into Idaho pretty good on potatoes.
Are you really now?
Yeah, the general crops are Nebraska and South Dakota.
Well, just because I know my Western Kansas guys, when the Iowa guys get up and talk, they're going to be like, shit, I don't want to hear that. They don't know how to farm out here. And, the Illinois and Iowa guys, I'm just telling you, that's right. Right?
I'd love to have some soils in Nebraska. They got higher part per million Ks than they do part per million mags, and they don't need to apply K in some of the spots in Nebraska.
Okay, you got me. But I'm just saying, I know the rebuttal when I go to dinner tonight will be, shit, that guy in Iowa, he doesn't know how to farm. Come farm out here, we get 3 inches of rain in 2 years. And, so I know how it'll be. But I want to shoot straight. And so same with Barrett. I think we've seen it work great on some areas. And I'd say we've had awesome results this year best we've seen. So Barrett, tell them a little about your background, how we did this.
Yeah, so, I think Vern once told me, never waste a good crisis. A crisis is an opportunity. I think Kevin even echoed that in part of his opening remarks. There's a lot of opportunity in agriculture right now, obviously, but there's, this fertilizer prices, the way they are, is a bit of a crisis. I mean, it's crazy how fast it's gone up, and it's hard to plan for it. But I think it's an opportunity too. And in addition to cost, I think there's another kind of subtle wave that's hitting anybody who's using fertilizer, which is that whether it be government, whether it be public perception, there's going to be some regulations, some limitations around fertilizer usage and its runoff and the impact that may or may not have. I'm not saying it's appropriate. I'm not saying we should have it. I'm saying it could be coming, and I'm telling you that from experience, because I come from the lawn and landscape business. So before I founded Organics, I had the largest lawn spray company in the Mid-Atlantic. So we competed with ChemLawn and Lawn Doctor and people like that. So we had hundreds of trucks that went out every day and sprayed lawns and put down fertilizer. Traditional chemical fertilizer, traditional chemical pesticides. If the grass wasn't green enough, we just put down more nitrogen. It always seemed to work okay. And that was kind of our strategy and our philosophy. And we were the largest lawn care company around the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Then the Chesapeake Bay watershed started to target the lawn care industry, saying that our runoff from lawn care was going into the Chesapeake Bay, which is a shallow body of water surrounded by suburban fertilized lawns, and that runoff was going into the bay and creating phytoplankton algae blooms and creating problems with the shellfish and such. And so they started to regulate how many pounds of nitrogen we could apply. We used to apply a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. All of a sudden, we can only apply 3/4. 30% of it had to be slow release. We couldn't apply any fertilizer after November 1st. We couldn't apply fertilizer before March 1st. Then they started to say we couldn't apply phosphorus at all unless we had soil tests that said we needed it. We then started to get the fertilizer cops come in and audit us and give us fines and write us tickets every time we left a little bit of fertilizer on a street or on a driveway, because they said that was on impervious coverage and it was going to go into our waterways. And I'm going to tell you, as a lawn care operator with hundreds of trucks and a bunch of applicators that are paid to go get this stuff done quick and not carefully, it was a pain in the ass to run that business with these guys breathing down my neck. And I said, I got to change. On top of that, I had the Whole Foods consumer telling me, hey, are you putting this stuff down? Is this going to be good for my kids and my dog and good for the bay? And I thought it was. I mean, I walked on the stuff every day. My kids got it done, but nonetheless, I couldn't fight those momentum-building issues. So we started to look for a better way, and that's what drove me into microbials a long time ago. Is because we looked for how could we continue to create these green and weed-free healthy lawns in a way that wasn't going to affect the bay, in a way that I could deal with the fertilizer cops and these growing regulations. I could do it with no phosphorus. I could do it with limited nitrogen. I could look these customers in the eye and say, we're the Whole Foods of lawn care, just like you want us to be. And these were the headwinds that were facing us. That was our crisis. And then we also had a fertilizer price spike, not quite as severe as we have today, but we had that as well. So all of those things pushed me into finding a new solution. And, Kevin said earlier today, he says, when change outside of your organization is greater than the change inside your organization, then that leads to an irrelevant organization. And I think that we need to think about that today, because there is a lot of change. There's a lot of change in, obviously, commodity pricing, fertilizer and chemical prices. Obviously, the grain prices are great right now, and that's a change. That maybe they're going to go the other way. Hopefully they don't go the other way. Hopefully the fertilizer goes first. But in any case, that is a lot of change. But then we're having all this technology hitting the farm as well. And when you think about change and you think about opportunity and you think about all these things that we have to find a new way, we have to find solutions, we have to add competition, as Mitch says. I think that if you look at and there's 3 companies up here talking about microbes. I don't think that was an accident by Kevin. I think that if you look at the microbial technology and the development of microbial technologies around plant health and plant protection, they're evolving rapidly. And I think that if you look at the evolution of chemistry, whether that be chemical fertilizers or chemical plant protection or plant fertility, I think we've seen 95% of the evolution we're going to see there. It happened in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And wonderful things happened in productivity, not taking anything away from it. But today, right now, we're on the cusp of some significant innovation in microbial technology. I like to say microbial technology today is like internet in 1999. We all know really big things are going to happen. It's going to change how we do everything, but we're not quite sure how it's going to be implemented exactly. And there's a bunch of stuff out there that might not end up coming to the end. But I think that you'd be foolish to not look at microbial technologies and how they can help make you a low-cost producer. Regardless of what you're getting, per bushel, how can we be the lowest cost producer? And if we're always the lowest cost producer compared to market, then we're always going to win. And so whether it's good times or bad times, we got to focus on being lowest cost producer. And to do that, I think we got to look at new ways. And so here's another statistic. In 2020, $19.6 billion worth of fertilizer was applied in the United States. 60% of that was on corn, soy, and wheat. 256 published studies basically summarized down to say, of that it was $18.6 billion worth of fertilizer, $9.2 billion of it was actually used by the plant. The rest of it was tied up in the soil in forms the plant could not use, washed away into our water, or volatilized into our atmosphere. That's just part of the properties of fertilizer. That's just kind of how it works. But there are solutions to getting, so that's like putting dollars, and these days that's like putting $4, right? Because everything that used to cost $1 now costs $4. That's like putting that stuff and just watching it go right down the Mississippi, or watching it volatilize into the atmosphere, or just getting tied up in concrete and we can't touch it. But we can reverse some of that trend. We can make so that maybe instead of 9.2 billion getting used, maybe we could get 14 billion used. How do we do it? We do it by building better functional soils, and we do that by addressing the right microbial technology, using beneficial bacteria, beneficial fungi, protozoa, amoeba, all of these things that are going to work to help make everything in the soil work the way it's supposed to. Doesn't mean we're never going to use chemicals or fertilizers again. We absolutely are. They're going to continue to help us push the envelope of yield and help improve things. But it can't be the only solution. If it is, we're going to go into a vicious cycle of more expensive, more fertilizer, and it's just going to keep going, I think, down the rabbit hole. Or we can stop that trend and start to address the fundamental issues that are happening with the soil. And we've got technologies now that we didn't have even 5 years ago that can help us do that. And the next 5 years is going to be, I believe, a dramatic leap in technology around how we use microbes, what we understand about microbes, and how they're impacting the soil. It's, for people like Grant and I, it's evolved rapidly in the last 5 years, and we're seeing it, and it's because of the technology that's available to us to measure these things, to see these things. I can do a DNA fingerprint today for $200 that 4 years ago cost me $2,000. That's what tells me all the microbes that might be in a teaspoon of soil, and then how to adapt that and make it so it's more functional. So I think if you look at when change inside your organization, outside your organization is greater than change inside your organization, you might be irrelevant. If you don't take a look at microbial technologies as a way to enhance the profitability of your farm, as a way to enhance the productivity of your soil, then I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice. And we've got 3 companies up here that we'd all love to talk to you about it, and I think we're all telling similar stories from different points of view. But I do think it's part of the solution, and I think these high fertilizer prices are a great opportunity to maybe supplement some of that and look at some alternatives.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board. Grant, what do you got? You're chomping
Well,
at the
just,
bit.
what BW Fusion is going to do is we're going to challenge the rest of the industry to prove it. Okay?
Yeah.
No more are we going to tell whimsical, mythical stories as nutritional people about how we're smarter than you and we're going to talk over your head and we're going to, get you to buy, right?
Yeah.
Flat out proof. And today, if you look at the Fusion website, there's a reason why we have more than just our biological. We're not biased to our biological. There's plenty of different biologicals out here, and there's going to continue to be developing. Yeah. And so it's going to be a race, just like the internet, just like you said. But knowing, the whole picture and proving it. You mentioned with the organics, maybe there's a couple times it didn't yield. Well, what we do is we measure every time we use our biological. We measure what's it doing in the soil, and we can show you it did its job. It did exactly what we told you it could do. But there's 3 other massive limiting factors in your farm that you're not addressing right now. And our consortium couldn't address all of them, right? And so knowing that there's a ratio of phosphorus to zinc that you have to pay attention to, and then knowing that, what zinc's going to get me there. And, knowing the numbers is really what's going to be key. Yeah. And knowing where to put the gas pedal and where to put the brake.
I think that's important. And I think Barrett, that's what we talked about, Barrett and I think we had some disconnect on our farmers were just kind of doing a lot of their own style of testing. Don't you agree, Barrett? Where I think Grant's saying, they've got a really structured program in place where they go out to check on the farmer specifically. And that's what we're trying to get implemented, where we can have some more of that type of activity agreed upon. I remember when I went to Mitch and said, do you want to run some organic? Mitch is like, yeah, I want to take a look at it for sure. He's like, but I'm testing and running everything on the farms before we'd make any moves on anything. Remember, Mitch, when And so, you know, Mitch, I think you're right in the same camp with Grant, because you own your own farms as well. You're like, you want to see it.
Well, that's what the testing, then that can follow you no matter what state you're
Yeah.
in, no matter what soil you're on. If we get a test back and they got a 4 pH, we're not selling them our biological. We're telling them put some frickin' lime on, and we're not selling them the biological. Our biological doesn't do well in a low pH environment. So knowing that about your product is key, and again,
Right.
knowing when to push the brake.
Right.
Hey,
We
Kevin,
got
one
we got a
thing-
product, Kevin, I hope I'm not getting off script here, but as Grant talks, I can't contain myself. We're getting ready to send out 2,500 acres of a biological product to 500 farmers. And it'll be complimentary. If you'd like to be on that list, come see a Meristem representative. But we're gonna send you 25 acres of a stock decomposition product. And we've hired a wonderful fleet of interns that's gonna come to your farm this summer with soil probes and resid gauges to test the tensile strength of your residue. And what you're gonna find is, and then you'll be able to eliminate one tillage pass with the use of this product. And the soil test is gonna show the use of this product is gonna give you 30 pounds in, 5 pounds of P, and 30 pounds of K. In today's market, that's about $60 an acre. And Kevin, the way that we're gonna try and get the word out instead of selling it to guys, we're gonna give 500 farmers 2,500 acres and do the soil test for them and mail them from your farm to demonstrate there's a way to take 60 bucks out of your fertilizer program.
Jeff, you had something to add. I seen you.
Yeah, I was just gonna add a couple of things, and a couple of things really comforting to hear with me sitting on this panel today is, and Grant, you brought up tissue sampling. And, man, I've always thought that's been underutilized. I know as a company, we not only got in tissue sampling about 25 years ago, but we made some really big investments in technology around tissue sampling. And I think when we get through these periods right now that we have with these really high commodity fertilizer prices, and then they offer some fantastic alternatives into how we can treat the crop. We can give it what it needs when it needs it. And I used to refer to it as spoon feeding it, but that's great. And then the other piece I heard is soil health, or it was referred to as, and I think if you put it all together, it's soil health. And if I look at the room today, and I know we got an awful lot of growers out here, and I think that probably your single greatest investment you have on your farm is your soil. And I can't think of anything that we need to spend more time analyzing and working with is that soil. And I think that we're going to see as we go forward, and you talked about regulations, and I agree with you 100%. I think that a lot of our government programs going forward are going to be tied to sustainability and how we're treating that soil and making sure that we're putting just what it needs and what the crop needs, and that, you know, if we got that amount of deficiency of what we're actually putting out and what's getting used, and we're going to have to find a way to curtail that going forward. And so I used the word alternatives earlier when I spoke, and being open to change. And those are the things that I'm talking about, is that it's just not the standard way that we've been doing things. Number one, whether it's a supply demand issue or whether it's a regulation that's put in place, we've got to be open. But one thing that doesn't change is the preciousness of that soil, and we don't make any more of that. And we've got to treat it in that capacity, I think, going forward. And I see a lot of improvement over the last 10 years, in my opinion. There is a lot more openness, but at the same time, like you mentioned, we got technology today that we never had before that's telling us things and showing us things. And that's the great thing about a yield monitor on a harvester. You don't have to wait 2 or 3 years anymore to figure out, are the things that you're doing or you're being advised to do they work or not? We have growers text us from the combine seat all the time, in letting us know when it worked, and they let us know if something we did doesn't work, and that's fantastic. That lead time has really been cut down dramatically. So these are I think these are all excellent comments, and I think they all kind of point us in the direction that I think we're headed in agriculture, and I think it's exciting.
I appreciate it. Let's switch gears. Let's get Carter. You guys fell asleep down there on the land side. Carter, Malloy, like I said, I think they Carter, you guys just finished a 40 million round raise, B round, double subscribed, excuse me. Got a lot of big investors involved in the last round. A lot of Wall Street money coming their direction. Carter, what are you seeing on the farm ground side? You seeing heavy demand, high demand? Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's been a lot going on here the last 45 minutes. I'm feeling real dumb, so I should need to catch up here for a minute. Grant gave me the most impassioned chemistry lesson I think I've ever gotten from anyone. But he did say something that was really important to me, which is tell the truth. And Jeff, you said this word communication a lot. Yep. And we as a company it's on our wall everywhere, transparency. This notion of don't hold secrets. Share the information that you have with everyone else. Empower your customers. Your customers are smart, right? So let people know what we're dealing with, and if you are that person that provides information and builds that open relationship, then you can build a much better long-term business and business relationship with those people you help. And in our case, that's people that buy and sell land. That's what we do. So a quick catch up there. Yes, Kevin, we haven't press released that yet, but we did just close on a large funding round. We're really excited as a business to help people buy and sell land smarter, right? Using technology, data, and expertise and bringing that to market. And I asked the question, where are we headed in land? I don't know. If I told you I knew, I'd be lying. I believe we're going to continue heading in the direction we are, which is there's tons and tons of considerations to take into account, whether that's interest rates and monetary policy, inflation, what's going on there, on-farm margin. But we like to dumb it down a little bit and think about supply and demand. And so the demand side, there's the craziest amount of money in the world that there has been, the wildest amount of liquidity out there that we've seen in our lifetimes, and no real reason for that to slow down. And in fact, we all look at farmland, I look at farmland and go, oh my gosh, it's gone up a lot in the last couple of years after a very long pause. But on a relative basis, it hasn't caught up. Right? On a relative basis, look at the stock market since 2020. We're talking less than 2 years ago from the COVID bottom, we've effectively doubled, 200%. And we look at it and go, oh my God, Iowa's up 30% in parts of the state. Like, that's certainly a crazy number, don't get me wrong, and not necessarily a great one to see, and it's not comforting for all of us here as farmers and landowners to see that type of volatility. But when we consider the demand construct of this market that we operate in, there's a lot of demand, and on a relative basis is an incredibly attractive asset for everyone here. On the supply side, there's less and less of it. First, there's less land, right? Like, there's physically, we're have less farmland every year than we did the year before. But beyond that, we were really surprised as a company, and this is what we do for a living. We monitor volume of sales, and we were surprised at, even though the prices ran as hard as they did, how little came to market through the end of last year. And we think it was boosted above normal because of some implications of potential tax policy and some folks, go ahead and getting out before year end to make those sales happen. So the supply side of the picture is pretty dry, and we think it likely remains so. So as a result, in our opinion, we don't know this very obviously, but it does seem there's a lot of support in the value of farmland where we're headed, and that continuing to compound slowly over time because of these very simple constructs of supply and demand. Now, the crazier thing is trying to value the land itself. Like what we're discussing now is macro. Okay, it's great. Does anybody in here know what their land is worth? Right. That's weird, right? That feels odd for all of us. Like, I know what my house is worth, like plus or minus $8,000, because I can go online and inside of a few moments discover the value of a home. There's trillions of dollars of farmland in the United States, of which we all here participate in. And yet, your house, plus or minus $8,000. The farm, you may know a couple $1 million farm, plus or minus $1 million, especially in this market. It's just wild to us that it's that inefficient and that there's secrets around there and there's no information transparency. The sale market for the buyers and the sellers, I think you used the word hoodwinked earlier. And whether on purpose or not, it happens far too often, where either the buyer or the seller of the land does not get a fair shake. We mentioned this word transparency earlier, big on this idea of bringing information to market and equipping people with information. Perhaps I could bring up another person named Rich Barton, unfamiliar entrepreneurial name, but he built Expedia. Then he built Zillow, then he built Glassdoor. That's an insane track record. And the thesis was dead simple. Power to the people. Give people information. They're smart enough to make their own decisions. Don't make decisions for them. Don't tell them, trust me, you need to put this much on your farm in this particular area. And don't say, trust me, I know the local market, I can sell your land for the right price. Instead, give them information and work with them to make that decision, whether you're working with inputs or buying and selling the actual land. And that's really where we're focused, is bringing that information to market and building trust with people by just giving it to them. And so since we already put out one, we talked about the money we raised, we'll go ahead and also talk about Acre Maps, MAPS. So acremaps.com, it's still private. You can sign up right now for a beta. It is the best mapping software on the market. It's the best software for comparable sales data. It's the best software to understand what a buyer and seller are really going to take into consideration when they're buying and selling land. We have not yet launched that. It's private in a beta. It is available for you to sign up today and test it out. It's free, and it is the best thing on the market, and we are just getting started, and it will remain free because we want to empower everyone here and everyone in this industry with more information. Just as you guys talk about telling the truth and communication and transparency and opening up, we as a business are really excited about that so that we can have a more informed discussion around where are farmland prices headed, because we know far too little as a group here. So that's what we're excited about as a company and what we're working on today. There's about 70 people at Acre Trader, and I think there'll be about 150 or 200 here in a year. And these are the problems we're focused on, is helping us all really understand the value of land and where we're headed.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're super excited to partner with them and try and bring more transparency to the table for all of our network of people. And that's what I was excited about. I like the fact Carter using his own tools, and just like Grant and them, but Carter doing it on the real estate side. When I'm out looking for farm ground, well, hell, I mean, I want to be able to utilize Carter's back end that he's used to buy farm ground with the money coming in from Wall Street. I want to be able to use those same type of tools, and I think it's awesome that we can bring that transparency to the party. Why I'm bullish farm ground, I mean, Carter hit on it. Guys, I mean, let's go back to the 80s. We can go back to whenever you want to go back. I don't think you've ever seen this type of demand. We've always had demand from the farming community. I mean, a piece of ground comes up beside you or it's a continuous track, you're going to bid on it. And we've always had that action. But you haven't had this type of action from Wall Street and this type of action from funds and outside entities. I mean, I'm getting calls all the time, people wanting to, I had a guy wanted to throw, well, he did throw about $50 million at farms this last year. They had liquefied several car washes. Their family had amassed car washes. And they threw it was somewhere 50, 55 million. And they want to throw another 100 million at farms. And they don't know anything about it. And they're just letting farmers rent it back, whoever had it that was currently renting it. So, I mean, they weren't trying to create any waves. They just want to own the farm ground for the long-term legacy play to put it into their perpetual trust. And that's how they're playing it out. And I think we're going to continue to see that type of interest. And I've been a part of bubbles, and I've traded in bubbles, and I tell everyone, I talk with all these guys with PhDs and all that craziness, but you got to have more, in a bubble. There has to be no buyers below the market. You understand? There's no buyers. If I ask everybody in this room, you interested in buying farm ground? Yeah, but I'm waiting for a break, right? Yeah, we're all waiting for a break. There ain't gonna be no break. The break's gonna be minimal. We're all waiting for a break. Everybody's in the same boat in here. Let's all call it what it is. Probably not a big break. Yeah, corn prices drop. Okay, you're gonna come down a little bit. But the demand is so heavy. They don't care about the clipping the coupon each year on the production side. They want to own the ground for the long play. So that's where I'm telling you, you have so many buyers, not a lot of supply. It's tough to be in a bubble. Oh, we're going to have hyperinflation. Okay, sure, maybe. But there's a huge, massive amount of wealth that's looking to move and transfer and to move into safer asset classes, and they see it as land. Remember, the world moves by the stories they love and believe in. People love the story of land. I can't stress it enough. They want to own land. Mock said, oh, the guy's 60 here, he's going to retire. Okay, who cares? The guy loves land. I love buying baseball cards. My wife thinks I'm nuts. She didn't think I was nuts when I sold some cards for, 6 figures plus this year. It wasn't nuts then, but hey, it was nuts for years before that, but it wasn't nuts to this year. But anyway, I think people love land. I don't think that's going to change. I think when you see new things come out that they're going to use land for, I think it's going to drive the demand side even higher. Location may be critically important. I can't argue that with some of our producers who have moved and ranchers who are relocating for strategic purposes. That may be critical, Carter, as you would say, and no. And I think that's vitally important. And we'll get to some questions real quick. I'll switch gears. Let me bring up my most controversial new acquaintance, Chris Baumann, the founder. Look at Chris down there. What are you looking at, Chris? You got it. Of Cash Rents. A couple of my super close friends were in town a month ago. We got in a heated argument about this. And I fully respect, I'll just call it out. Rock, where you at? Right there. Rock was heated. He said, if you let this guy on stage, you and I are going to blows after this shit. And I said, well, look, here's my take on it. And I certainly don't want this to be my Dixie Chicks moment. And it's not. I promise you. It ain't going down that way. And I told Rock that. I met Chris. He was an investor. He has farms in, where you at, Chris? In
Peoria, Illinois.
Peoria, Illinois. Chris was like, dude, this is crazy, this whole industry. He's like, I got smoked by 2 different farmers. I got this by 10. He's like, there has got to be some different way to do this, to know who I can rent my ground to, who's not just going to rape and pillage the ground, or who's not just going to screw me over on the share. And I said, no, I don't know about any of that. I don't really know. I said, that's a touchy subject. And he had met another gentleman, Noah's in the crowd, that had done in a different business, had done really well and done a big exit. And Chris is an entrepreneur, and he said, I think I'm going to start this thing up called Cash Rents. Oh, whoa. You know what I said. Whoa. I'm like, wow, you better build a serious moat and have a serious arsenal around your house, because I'm like, this shit could get crazy. And Chris is like, why? Why'd he say it? I said, well, I mean, you're messing with people's lives here, dude. I'm like, this is people's families, people's lives, and this is serious. So I'm like, I know it's coming, and I understand it's coming, but are you sure you want it to be you? And Chris is like, well, I think if we do it right, it can be helpful. And I listened to their whole plan, and I said to him, I said, look, man, you really got to think. And I think the crowd here will have questions and help Chris with how he can do it that isn't going to be super disruptive to people's lives and families and things, because we don't want that. And Chris, I know you don't want that either. And we know that it's coming. Cash Rents is basically going to show what the ground's rented for, what your neighbors are paying for the rents. They've got some incredible data. No one is a team of computer engineers and analytics people have the data, and you can see what the rents are and what they're going for. And like I said, I'll let Chris explain some more. I thought it was interesting how they talked about possibly a feature of, rating the farmers. And I don't know if you guys ever went anywhere with it, but we talked about, like an Uber, you talked about, where you rate your driver. And maybe that helps for the good farmers. They get great ratings, and more and more people want to rent to them. I've had some of my farmers who are bigger farmers to go rent ground, and they don't get the ground rented because the person don't want to rent to someone who's a big farmer. They only want to rent to somebody who's a starter. They only got 5. I'm going to help this person out. Well, I don't know if that's fair either. I don't know what's fair in this space, but I promise you the technology is coming, and there are going to be people who make this wildly transparent. And I don't know whether we have to do a better job as producers, our relationship with the tenants, because just like I said, there's going to be more landowners who aren't tenants, who aren't farmers, I should say. The guy with the car wash, he's going to end up jumping on Chris's platform, Cash Rents. Now we have to deal with this. How in the hell are we going to deal with it? What are we going to do? So explain to them your vision here, so where you're going with this.
Well, first of all, thank you for putting me up here, maybe. We had some lively discussions last night at the bar. One of the things that I want to convey today is the vision of Cash Rent, which Kevin talked about. And when I got to Kansas City here last night, I'm just a modest guy from the Midwest. I woke up this morning, I realized I was the most powerful man in the farming industry because everybody told me last night I was going to destroy it. I was like, holy cow, me, 40, from Podunk, Illinois, I'm going to destroy a $60 billion industry single-handedly. And everybody told me, Chris, you're going to drive up rent prices. This is what you're doing. You're destroying the farming community. Okay. I just listened for an hour about inputs and fertilization and stuff I have no clue about. No offense, and no interest. I'm not a farmer. I'm an entrepreneur. A little bit about my background. Bought and sold mechanical companies. I've been a real estate broker for probably 12, 14 years now, somewhere in there. And how this got started was Kevin's story. Everybody loves land. I'm an outdoorsman. I like to four-wheel, hunt, fish. So in 2011, 2012, I was fortunate enough to buy my first farm. Wife, kids, everybody could come out. Had a house out there, play. Consequently, it was half tillable, half timber, and I said, well, I guess I'm in the farming business all of a sudden. And went to the neighbor. He said, oh, the guy farming your ground, he's terrible. I said, okay, who should farm it? He goes, well, I should farm it. Well, no shit. Okay, this makes perfect sense to me. Perfect. I said, well, what do we do here? Cash rent or 50-50? He goes, oh, no, you don't want to cash rent, Chris. You want to do 50-50. You'll make so much more money doing 50-50. I said, all right, let's do it. Whatever, it's 60-some tillable acres. It's not going to make a hill of beans difference to me. So I enter this relationship and, okay, I'm getting fertilizer bills, P&K, C&Q, I don't know what the hell's going on. And now I'm getting seed bills, and I'm just like, what is going on? Then I start getting calls, hey, when do you want to sell your grain? I don't know. You're the farmer. Tell me when to sell the grain. Where do I store it? I don't know. Does it cost me to dry? All of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm like, Jim, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not a farmer. I want to own land. I want to enjoy it. And I want it to be a passive investment for me. And that's the big theme, with what Carter's doing is farmland's more attractive, from a recreational and passive income standpoint than ever. And so I went to him and I said, let's just do cash rent. I don't want to run half of a farm here. He goes, okay, I'll give you $150 an acre. Well, that's pretty low. That's less than I'm making now. He said, well, you got a lot of deer damage. You got a lot of field edges and coves. And I said, well, the yield's the yield. That's after the deer eat it, right? Okay. I said, well, Jim, give me some time. Let me think about it. And me being the entrepreneur, curious mind, I went and bought a GPS, drove it around the fields, and realized I had 2 more acres than I thought I did. Then I started digging into data, did soil samples, got all this information. Then I started cross-referencing with U of I, extension, ag extensions, and it's like, okay, I've got all this information that I've spent 3 weeks, a month in my spare time, avoiding my family. And then I called some farmers. I'm from Morton, Illinois. It's the pumpkin capital of the world, but it's got some great row crop soil, and I called some farmers. Hey, what would you rent this ground for? What would you rent it for? And it varied. And I was fascinated by this. And it was, well, why can you pay $180? Why can you pay $200? Why can you pay $230, $240? And it boiled down to farming as a business. And not all farmers are equal. Some farmers are willing to break even and spread their overhead over more acres. I'm not getting involved in that decision. And when people tell me I'm going to drive up rent prices, I can't do that. All I can do is create an open, transparent marketplace and provide educational resources to landowners. If you want to know who's driving up rent prices, it's your fellow farmers, not me. So back to my original story, I go back to my farmer and I say, hey, I did all this research. Here's what I got. I lay it all out. I said, I think 220 is a fair price. He's like, oh, okay. I'll give you 150. I'm like, whoa. We're not doing this. So that led me to call my best friend, who's a big land broker. And I said, how do I find a new farmer? I don't know. What do you mean? I'm just like, I'm really not really happy with my farmer. He's kind of screwing me. Well, I don't know. You put something up in a coffee shop or knock on doors or... I was just like, this is crazy. It's a $60 billion market with no transparency. Things are done on a handshake. No competitiveness. And everybody on this panel talked about breaking up monopolies, bringing in competition, transparency, all the things that everybody in this audience loves until I come along.
Exactly.
What? I ruined it for everybody. And being from where I'm from, a small farming community, and a lot of my friends are farmers, and I told somebody last night I had an epiphany, talking to one of my friends sitting in his barn having a beer. And I said, Mike, you farm 4,000 acres. I said, how do you grow your operation? How do you gain access to more ground? He said, it's impossible. Most deals are under the table, word of mouth, within family. And I just asked him, I said, what if I created an open, transparent marketplace that gave you access to more ground that you could bid on? He's like, I think that would be fantastic. Okay, talked to a couple more farmers. Yeah, that's great. And, what Kevin said was, oh man, you better build a, moat and everything else. It's been surprising the response of the farming community where we lease ground, because you see people that are like, hey, thank you so much. I never would have heard about this opportunity without you. You got that young farmer that might want to get aggressive and farm that ground. You get the pissed off farmer that's been farming it for 20 years and he calls me and he says, that's my farm. And I said, no, it's not. It's the landowner's farm. You've been fortunate enough to be the tenant for 20 years. And I've got great news for you. You can continue to farm that ground. Here's how you register and here's how you bid. Open, transparent, and high bid does not win with us. We don't want farmers coming in, oh, just because you're high bid, you're going to come in and do your thing, rape the soil, and get out of there. That's not what we do. We want to foster relationships and maintain soil health. It's part of our business model. So I think what Kevin said is very prudent. I wanted to give you a little bit of background, and I'd be more than happy to take questions. I mean, a little bruised from last night, but.
Grant, what do you think? You're a farmer. Mitch, you're a farmer.
Yeah. I had a lot of friends. I had some claps earlier, so I don't want to get rid of the claps. But yeah, I think having some, what I see, I guess, with all of our customers, yeah, it's not a level playing field. It probably isn't fair. The bigger getting bigger, and I think the mid-size would like to get bigger, but yeah, they just don't have the opportunities. They don't have the connections. They're not in the loop. So I could see the benefits of being in the loop more.
Well, and not only that, you've got the largest turnover coming in the history.
Right.
With land. And, as this generation turns over and passes their farm down to their kids, and their kid lives in San Francisco and Chicago and South Florida, they don't know what to do with their ground. And we're going to see that rollover, and that's why I encourage, get on board. This is coming. When we have a farm that comes up for lease, we email every farmer in a 60-mile radius. New farm for lease, new opportunity to grow your business. You guys make the business decision on what you want to pay per acre. And what I find fascinating is the guy that bids 300, the guy that bid 270 is like, he ain't gonna make money. I don't know. The guy at 300 is like, yeah, I can make money at that. Maybe he needs to learn how to be a better operator. And then the guy bids 330, and the guy at 300 is like, well, he can't make money. I don't know, maybe the guy at 300 needs to be a better operator. I don't make these decisions, guys. You know, it's an open, transparent marketplace to bring people together and foster relationships. It's Airbnb meets eBay, but high bid doesn't win. I mean, I would say 90% of the farms we lease, the landowner does not pick the high bidder. And that's due to various reasons. Proximity to farm. One guy says, I don't want a guy 40 miles away. Coming in, planting, blowing out of town, coming in and harvesting. Great, you're the landowner, make that decision. If you'd want to take $20 less per acre, and you want a guy that drives by it every day, that's up to you. You're the landowner. It's your asset. We are here to maximize profitability and return on investment for landowners, institutional investors, but we also want to provide opportunity to the farming community to grow their operation if they so choose. Because in a marketplace, if you're not fostering value for both sides, you're going to fail. It's simple economics. If I'm not providing value to the landowner, and I'm not providing value to the farming community, my business does not work. Our business does not work. So you can throw rocks all day, but that's why Kevin has me up here, because this is coming. It's here, and it's going to transform the farming industry forever. So
I like the idea of
Go ahead, Mitch. Yeah, go
I like
ahead.
the idea of farmer rating, if that's something he would.
The farmer rating thing?
Yeah, rating, because I see a lot of sharp, mid-sized farmers they're just damn good operators, but again, just aren't in the loop. And
Yeah.
if you can make it not about price and about really how much value they're bringing to the farm guy, you know, cutting the trees out of the fence, making sure the weeds are sprayed, you know, that kind of sweat equity would be nice to see that you know has some value.
absolutely. And we had to be a little bit cautious rolling out on, you know, everybody fills out a farmer profile. And, you know, coming out of the gate, you're like, what do you want that profile to look like? Well, you want financial solvency, you want all this information, you want to vet the farmer to the nth degree to make sure it's a good fit for the landowner. But we've rolled out that process pretty slowly and methodically, because anytime you create a new marketplace for a new business, you don't want to upset the apple cart with everything right across the starting line of, oh, hey, give me your social security number, give me this, give me this, give me this. You know, let's wade through this, and we've really had a white glove approach of, okay, we have an average of 11 bidders per property. And that's what's changing the game, is you've got a demographic of, 30 years ago, you'd farm in a 10-mile radius. Now people are traveling 40, 50, 60 miles. The first farm we leased, guy lived 50 miles away. I said, why do you want to farm this ground? He goes, I farm 1,000 acres right next to it. It's a perfect add-on for me when I come over here. The game is changing. Technology's changing. We talk about fertilizer and yields continually getting improved, getting better. Well, shouldn't cash rents be getting better? I mean, we were talking last night, there's new combine technology coming out that's increasing yields 20 to 30%. Like, the whole industry is being revolutionized right in front of our eyes, and ag tech is one of the last vestiges out there, and it's just starting. And companies like AcreTrader, I love what Carter's doing. It's democratizing the agricultural industry from a buy and sell and renting standpoint. So,
And Grant, you said something really important, this notion of empowering that mid-sized farmer and helping those people grow their business. That's similarly, we don't have a farmer rating, but we don't optimize rent for our platform. We optimize to find the best farmers. That's actually the land that usually the land that we buy is brought to us by farmers. Someone says, hey, I know someone that retired, or the kids in South Florida want to sell and it's neighboring, and I'd like to go farm that land as well. Will you guys be my capital partner? They'll often invest alongside us, but you know, maybe they don't have the pocketbook for a $5 million tract of land today, we can buy that in partnership with the farmer and help them grow. I think that's a really important part of our story, I think often yours as well, that's missed, is our real constituent is the farmer here in the U.S. And then, yes, we have investors. They're not actually from Wall Street. I am not from China, which we hear sometimes. I'm from Arkansas, not far away. And we are all U.S.-based investors, most of which are individuals, many of which are farmers who come onto our platform and say, hey, I'm a farmer in Iowa, but I'd like to own some land in Idaho and Arkansas and Mississippi to diversify. I believe in land. Kevin, I love land. I'm obsessed with it. That notion, which I think most of us here are. That's what we provide. The buy side of our market as well is the opportunity to diversify and hold land in various places.
Here's my argument, and I argue with Chris and Noah on this. I don't know if you're really going to empower the mid-sized to smaller farmer. I personally.
I don't empower anybody. I empower the landowner to choose.
Oh, I hear you, but I don't necessarily know you're going to do the mid-sized and small farmer justice. And here's why I say that. If I'm a large farmer and I'm farming 20,000 acres, or I'm farming 30,000 or 50,000 acres, and I can buy all the latest technology, I can spread that out over a lot more land. I can pay more for a parcel of land than my neighbor who's only farming 500 acres or 1,000 acres. So I do have a decided advantage. And if you post the rents on the website that this guy's paying $150, and then this cat comes in and is paying $200, all of a sudden the landowner's going to be like, oh, hey, why are you? Well, he doesn't understand. This guy can spread it out over a lot bigger platform to divest and digest that rent price. So it will be harmful. Let's call it what it is. I mean, it's not going to not be disruptive and harmful to people.
Oh,
I think
it's going to be disruptive.
I think it's going to be disruptive as hell, but here's my way of thinking. I kind of like this guy. I don't mind him. He likes to hunt. He likes to fish. He likes to drink a little beer. A couple of kids.
A lot of beer.
Got a couple of kids. He's been very respectful to my family. If I kill him and knock him out of the game, who are we dealing with next? And I'm not sure I want to deal with the next cat. I don't want to jack with the West Coast tech guy. I'm just telling you. I don't think we can have any input or any say. I think Chris is willing to be open-minded, Noah, and listen to how this platform should maybe be built in the safest manner possible. And I think the most pissed off guys in the room need to get with him afterwards and shoot the guy some ideas. I mean, he's open to the ideas. I like the team he's built. They're open to ideas. I worry if we kill him, which the ag community, we know we can kill him. I mean, we know we can take it down and just throw a major crazy curveball and throw this. This could all end horribly. But we know it's coming, right? I mean, we know this is probably coming again and again and again. So we probably got to pick who we want to saddle up with on the thing. And that's why I brought Chris out. I mean, I said, hey, well, I'll let the chips fall where they fall in the room. And I'm going to keep arm's distance and see how the crowd is receptive. And I think you've explained it, Chris. And I don't know if there's a right answer to this that's helpful to our rural community that actually lives in those towns, farms the ground. That's where I think there's the difference. You know, you got an outside owner. You just said the kids living in California or living in San Francisco. Well, that's what pisses people off. I mean, that we're going to cater to them. Yeah, we're tapped on catering to them. I promise the crowd in here is pretty tapped on that. So, it's a fine line, and I think there has to be open discussion about the whole thing. And I think it's coming, regardless if it's Chris and Cash Rents or whoever it may be. I think it's coming down the pipe. I think Wall Street money is going to get behind someone like this and create the open transparency. And we're probably, the bottom line is we're going to have better open relationships with our tenants, keep them in the loop in a more diligent manner, whether it's writing them a newsletter and sending them pictures of your kids and the ball teams that they're playing on and what what you're doing with things. I mean, maybe that goes a long, long way. And hopefully it does. And I think Chris and them maybe can build out the platform to accommodate some of that and hopefully like the rating thing. And maybe that can add a lot. And what the soil What was the soil like when they left at the end? Are you just doing 1-year contracts, Chris, or 2 years?
No, we actually encourage every landowner to do a minimum of a 3-year contract.
Really?
Yeah, and, you know, that's for the best benefit of everybody involved. And, you know, we can only do so much.
I know the attorneys in the room would probably disagree with you. But.
Yeah, and that's fine. But as far as soil sustainability goes, we know that's the most important thing for the landowner. And yeah, a farmer can come in and rape the ground, do whatever, but we've talked about it for the last hour. The soil health is key to that asset. Yeah. And, you know, everybody says, well, what do you do to ensure that they don't rape the ground? You know, landowners ask us that all the time. And well, when you award the farmer his lease, everything's a digital contract and signed, and he has to provide evidence of current soil conditions. And at the end of the lease, he's got to provide evidence of the soil conditions that are maintained or better. Yeah. Okay, well, how do you do that? I said, well, they're contractually obligated. I said, how do you do it now with your farmer? Well, I don't. It's just a handshake. I guess just trust them. But part of that is what we're working on for building the future, is managing the soil testing process of once we execute a lease, we can partner with a soil company to have that, you know, 5x5 grids tested and put that in the queue for a soil test at the start of the lease. And then they've got a queue at the end of the lease 3 years down the road that they've got a work order in to test that soil. And we can house all that data and make sure that we have a data-centric platform that takes care of the landowners and ensures everybody's being taken care of.
Perfect. Let's jump to some questions real quick. Maybe this thing's at. Yeah, I think just text the questions in. You can maybe yell it out if you want. Hell, yell it out to them.
Kevin, I got some.
Yeah. What's that?
How many states are you involved in, was his question.
We can technically lease out ground in all 50 states. I mean, the platform allows that. Our price discovery tool that we trademarked, which is a basically machine learning AI linear regression algorithm that takes in all these factors of soil types. I think that's live in 27 states, where you can just simply click your parcel and then it automatically highlights the CLUs. You click those, that's all your tillable, and then it spits out a fair range. So I think that's in 27 states. And to that point, I haven't really talked about the price discovery tool. You know, we were talking with a farm manager last night. We did a cash rent estimate for him, and it came in at, I think, $280 or $290. And he goes, that's way off. I rented that out for $350. Well, good for you. But we don't want to throw this price discovery tool out there that says, oh, you should be getting $350 an acre. We want to provide a fair range because, back to my point, we have to provide value to the farming community. And if we're putting an unrealistic number out there where the majority of these farmers can't be profitable, we're not providing them value. We're doing them a disservice. And that's a very important point that, you know, we drilled home with that gentleman last night of, you know, this has got to work for everybody.
I'd suggest changing the name. Cash rent really drives what you're looking for. I'd call it findafarmer.com. That's what I'd call it. That's just me.
Farmers only?
Farmers only.
Yeah, farmers only. Find a farmer. There you go.
Farmers only.
Maybe you can just buy that company.
Jordan, you got any questions coming in?
Yeah, I had, I guess they're definitely rolling in on Chris's part, but one big question is, I guess I'll just roll through a few. What are your fees and how do cash rents get paid? How are you handling the contracts if someone breaches it? Another one a lot of people are asking is how you're different than tillable.
God.
I think Chris can answer a lot of those afterwards, if that's good, Chris. I mean,
yeah.
You can shoot him. I mean, it gets into a bunch of specifics, I know, and I think, yeah, difference between you and tillable. You want it?
Tillable, we came out almost the same time, and it was very interesting and very fortunate because at first it was like, oh my gosh, we've got this VC-backed behemoth that we're gonna have to compete with. And then all of a sudden, they got so much money behind them that they started sending letters to everybody saying, oh, well, we'll pay you 3 years rent up front, we'll pay you $300 an acre, cuts the landowner a check, and then the landowner finds out he's renting it for $340. They're a middleman. We're not a middleman, we're a marketplace. It says that front and center on our site. We want to empower landowners, we want to empower land brokers, we want to empower farm management, we want to help farmers grow. And I think if you look at what Tillable did and what they're currently doing is scrambling to try and change their business model. Now they're an online land broker. Now they're offering all these sorts of tools, trying to compete with, an acre trader and all these other things. So we're not in that business, and that's what makes us different.
I got one for Mitch that I know. You comfortable talking about it?
I don't know what the question is.
Exactly. Just tell everyone how, and this comes to me all the time, how can I help New Ag Tech get through the farm gate? Right? You were at Winfield. What was the deal with New Ag Tech? Not necessarily Ag Tech, but biologicals, new things that were coming online. How come they struggle to get to the farm gate? Well, now that the nutrient guys left, we can go ahead and talk about this.
Yeah, I am breathing a bit of fresh air since he's left the stage. Innovation's a fascinating thing. And when you look at these new innovations in agriculture, they're new, they sound like snake oil, it's pixie dust. And the other thing about new innovation is it's disruptive. If you're in the business of selling synthetic pounds of fertilizer, your worst thought at night before you go to bed is biologicals. Because everybody up here this morning today has made it very clear, we don't have a shortage of fertility, we have a shortage of plant availability. And biologicals will enable that availability, okay? If you're in the business, I'll share a little story. Back in 2000, I ran a little business for Dow Chemical called Chlorpyrifos. If any of you guys are a little older, probably remember Lohr's band. And one day somebody come to my office and showed me imidacloprid, and they said, for 1.6 ounces of imidacloprid, it'll do everything your 7 pounds of 15G will do. And there's nobody in the world that wanted to believe that wasn't true more than me. I went to John Deere, I did everything in my might to keep insecticide planter boxes on planters. But you know what, when that insecticide come out on the seed at 1.6 ounces, you can't buy Lohr's Band 15G anymore. I did everything in my power 21 years ago to stop the involvement of neonic herbicides, insecticides, not herbicides, and rootworm resistant corn. Why did I want to stop it? I made my money off selling you guys granular insecticide. And those two innovations were going to create a lot of heartburn for me. Well, the channel's still the same. There's still a revenue source that's driving everybody's business. And when new innovation comes in that can replace your current margin stream, you get pretty nervous and you're slow to adapt. You don't want to believe it's going to happen. Well, I'm here to tell you, it's going to happen. The channel will resist it because economically it's a bad deal for the channel. If you reduce inputs, do you realize every time you buy a crop input, 40% of that dollar goes to the channel? When you can reduce channel support, there's 40 points you can take out of your cost structure today. What's the best way to take that cost out? There's 40 points laying out there. How do you get it? You get it by disintermediating the channel and adopting new innovation. That's your path to low-cost production. And there will be every incumbent in the industry along the way that's going to tell you you're a complete idiot for trying it. Because when you try it and you use it, they're going to lose that sale. And that doesn't create a very good home environment when you don't have any money. So the channel's going to resist innovation. They have to. It's how they make money today. But don't get caught up in that. Follow the innovation. Get familiar with it. Maybe it's going to work for you. Maybe it's not. Kevin said he's got guys that don't work for them, but others absolutely love it. My message to you would be, just try it. Get started. Grant's a good guy. Call him up and work with him. If you don't like Grant, I'd love to work with you at Mariston. But the point is you got to get going. And there's great innovation on the sidelines that the traditional channel doesn't want you to have. Because when you get it, it's going to be like, another thing I used to do back in the same time I was managing Lord's Band, I managed the corn and soybean herbicide business for the same company, Dow AgroSciences. And then some turkeys in St. Louis released an innovation called Roundup Ready. And we made a lot of money selling soybean herbicides. In 4 years, that money disappeared. And in those 4 years, we did everything we could to convince you that Roundup Ready soybeans was the stupidest thing you could ever do. And what'd you do? You went ahead and used 90% of it anyway. And when you did that, you decimated the soil herbicide market. And everybody in that soil applied herbicide market was trying to stop the innovation. Trust me, if they tell you they weren't trying to stop it, they're lying to you. So the channel will resist new innovation because it doesn't pay them. My challenge to you is don't listen to everything the channel tells you. When there's millions and millions of dollars trying to get on your farm, influencing you to use new innovation, I'm not telling you to switch it all tomorrow, but get started this spring and try some of that new innovation. Work with it. Don't bet the farm on it. Try 100 acres. Pull the soil samples. See what happened. Do the carbon test. You're going to like what you see. One thing about land values is the carbon market. I mean, Kevin started the meeting off, he said, it doesn't matter what the truth is, it's what people believe. And the fact of the matter is people believe carbon's warming the earth. And governmental policy is going to drive the reduction of carbon. Walter started off this morning talking about this new soy diesel and all big oil building these $600 million modern facilities in North America. Well, they're doing it, and it's called, write it down. If you do one thing over the next break, Google H as in hydrotreated, H, V as in vegetable, oil, HVO. You will see a food source that's been talked about all morning. That in the U.S. it'll be soybeans that drive, and in Europe it's all rapeseed, it's canola. We could do it with canola in the U.S., but it's cheaper to grow and more economical to use soybeans and canola. But you can use multiple types of vegetable oil feedstock to create this new carbon-free fuel. When you take HVO diesel fuel and you put it in a jetliner, the carbon reduction is 90%. You put HVO fuel in your combine, the carbon reduction is going to be 90%. The product is undifferentiatable from diesel fuel, which means you don't have to put any fancy equipment on your trucks and your combines and your tractors. You can put the hose in and pump this stuff just like diesel fuel. It's going to have a 90% reduced level of carbon. I believe, I don't know how government policy is going to go or who's going to be in the White Office the next election. I know what I hope happens. I hope we have a big change. But the facts of the matter is government policy, whether you believe in carbon or you don't, people believe we got to reduce carbon. And if you want to reduce carbon, you have to reduce fossil fuels. There's now a technology at big oil's putting all this money into these HVO production facilities. Guys, the new Saudi oil field is your soybean field in the U.S. The reason big oil is building $600 million HVO facilities because they know their new fuel stock isn't going to be fossil fuel based, it's going to be vegetable oil based. And in the US, that vegetable oil will come from soybeans. That's going to, I just read an AgriPulse in the last 2 months. I'm sure a lot of people in here get AgriPulse every morning. The anticipated demand from big oil for HVO capacity in the US is currently we're short 40 million acres of soybeans. If we got to find 40 million acres of soybeans, that's the reason everybody said China will be the loser this morning, because it will become a food versus fuel battle. There's 40 million, I don't think corn demand's going to go down a lot. We got to find 40 million acres of soybean production in the US in the next decade. If we're going to find that, there's going to be a big food versus fuel competition. Right now, soybean oil, for the most part, participates in the protein market. The soybean acre in the future is going to drive the fuel industry. Kevin, I think that's one of the reasons you see such inflation in farm ground. It has nothing to do with today's economics. It has to do with the inflation we're in, biofuels, and a growing global population without an increasing land mass, and a new competitor on the ground called diesel fuel that will come from soybeans. It's going to be game-changing. So over break, Google HVO. I don't sell it. Promise I don't. I wish I knew where to invest in it. But Google HVO soybeans, and I think that will give you the curiosity to understand why ground that returns 1% is going for $12,000 an acre. It's not about near-term return. It's about harboring safe money and betting on biofuels and a growing global population.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're going to wrap it right there. I wish we could have done more. We got too many smart people on the panel. Again, too many guys putting some good info out. So let's take a 15-minute break, come back for our last speaker, call it a day, and we'll go out tonight afterwards and round it up tomorrow. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, guys. Talk to them when you get a chance.
Nice work. It's harmless. Pretty harmless.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's more nuts than me. I got more balls than brains.